Not everyone who wants your attention deserves your energy. Some just want to feed on your light until there's nothing left of you. You thought they loved you for who you were, but what they really loved was what you gave, the calm you brought into their chaos, the way you always answered, the way you always came back even when it hurt. That wasn't love, that was consumption, and you, without even knowing it, became the product. There's something no one tells you about being the reliable one. The more available you are, the more invisible you become. And one day your kindness isn't seen as kindness anymore. It's just expected. Your help isn't appreciated, it's demanded. And your energy, it becomes public property. So when you finally stop performing, when you stop showing up, stop explaining, stop giving, that silence doesn't just echo, it thunders. People don't ask if you're okay. They get uncomfortable, confused, even angry, because suddenly the emotional oxygen you used to provide is gone, and they don't know how to breathe without it. They never saw you, they only saw the function you fulfilled. But in that stillness, right there in the withdrawal, you reclaim something, not just your time, not just your energy, you reclaim yourself. Because every reaction you withheld, every yes you replaced with a pause, every unread message you didn't rush to answer, that wasn't coldness, that was power. And not the kind that shouts, the kind that rearranges the room without a single word. This isn't about playing games, it's about recognizing the unspoken rules that were playing you. Because the moment you stop feeding the dynamic, when you stop softening your edges for comfort, stop absorbing what isn't yours to carry, that's when the system breaks. And it should. Because the system was never built for your well-being. It was built on your self-erasure. So no, silence is not weakness. It's not absence. It's presence, finally redirected inward. It's the deep, calm clarity that arises when you realize you no longer owe the world an explanation for every boundary you hold. What happens next isn't always pretty, but it's real. Some will fall away. Some will resent the change. Some will accuse you of being distant, difficult, selfish. Let them. You're not here to be emotionally on call. You're here to be whole. And this pulling back isn't a retreat. It's a return to yourself. There's a quiet exchange happening in every relationship you've ever been in. Most people never notice it, but it's there, constantly pulsing beneath the surface. An invisible transaction of energy, attention, and emotional access. You think you're just showing up, being kind, staying available. You think your support is love, but sometimes without realizing it, what you're actually offering isn't connection, it's access. And those two things are not the same. Connection is mutual, access is one-sided. Connection holds presence, access demands performance. You become the fixer, the softener, the one who knows how to calm the storm, even if it's destroying you in the process. You think you're just being supportive, but over time, you're not just responding anymore. You're rehearsing. Your reactions become scripted, predictable, reliable, easy to control. And in that predictability, something gets lost. They're not loving you. They're loving your patterns. They know exactly when you'll apologize, when you'll back down, when you'll crack a joke to avoid the hard truth. They're not connecting to your essence. They're relying on your programming. And when someone knows how to trigger you, when they know which button to push and what version of you will show up in response, that's not intimacy, that's control. Whether they mean to or not, they've learned how to extract what they need from you by keeping you in a loop you don't even realize you're in. But here's the shift. When you stop reacting, when you choose silence instead of defending, stillness instead of pleasing, the entire dynamic collapses. Not because you changed the other person, but because you changed your part in the equation. And they don't know what to do with that. They stumble. The script falls apart. Because what they were really depending on wasn't your presence, it was your reaction. That's the emotional currency they were spending. And the moment you stop paying with your peace, everything changes. Because they don't fear your anger, they fear your neutrality, they don't fear your voice, they fear your silence. The void where their control used to live. When you no longer play the role you were assigned, you become unpredictable. Not in a chaotic way, but in a powerful way. The performance ends, and something more honest begins. But maybe the most important shift happens not in how they see you, but in how you begin to see yourself. You start noticing how often you were available at your own expense, how many times you chose proximity over peace, how often you gave access to parts of yourself that never felt truly seen, only used. And that's when you start pulling back, not out of resentment, but out of reverence, for your time, for your energy, for the version of you that's been buried under other people's needs. Because you're not a subscription, you're not an emotional first responder, and you are not required to keep feeding cycles that only deplete you. You're allowed to close the tab, to log out of dynamics that require you to abandon yourself just to maintain the illusion of closeness. You are allowed to be seen without performing. It's a hard truth to face, but sometimes what feels like love is just utility in disguise. You show up, you answer the late-night calls, you put their needs ahead of your exhaustion, you rearrange your peace to match their chaos. And because you've done it for so long, it begins to feel normal. Like this is what love is supposed to be: selfless, constant, all-consuming. But it's not love when your presence is only valued for what it offers, not for who you are when you're no longer giving. Your body knows the difference. You can feel it in the way your shoulders tighten when your phone lights up, the way your breath shortens when someone asks for just a moment, the way your spirit sinks when you say yes before you've even checked if you have anything left to give. Because you're not just tired, you're energetically bankrupt. Every emotion you carry, every thought you think, every yes or no you utter, broadcasts a frequency: joy, clarity, self-trust. They vibrate high. Guilt, resentment, depletion. They drag you down, and every time you say yes to what your soul didn't consent to, you fracture that frequency. You lower your vibration to match someone else's dysfunction. You are tuning your entire nervous system to chaos, not because you want to, but because you've been taught to equate love with sacrifice. You start believing that being drained is noble, that self-abandonment is compassion, that making yourself small is what makes you worthy of connection. But that belief is a trap, a spiritual illusion that keeps you stuck in patterns of martyrdom while calling it virtue, and slowly you stop recognizing yourself. Burnout doesn't arrive with fireworks. It creeps in quietly, in the numbness behind your smile, in the hollow ache that follows every "of course I'll help," in the way you flinch when someone praises your strength, because deep down, you know your strength is coming at the cost of your soul. You're not being loved, you're being used, and they don't even realize they're doing it, because you made it so easy. You never asked for anything. You never said no. You never showed the cost. So now they assume you're fine, and when you're not, they don't ask why. They just wonder why you've changed. But here's the truth: you didn't change. You finally noticed the pattern, and now you're choosing something different. Because you are not here to be depleted into proof of your value. You are here to be whole. You don't need to apologize for needing rest. You don't have to justify your boundaries or explain your limits. Not to those who only see you as useful when you're convenient. Love is not measured by how much you can endure. It's measured by how free you feel in someone's presence. And if being close to them feels like self-abandonment, then walking away is not betrayal. It's truth. You became indispensable, and for a while that felt like safety. They needed you. They counted on you. You were the one who made things work when they fell apart. You showed up, filled in the cracks, held it all together. You were the one who never crumbled, even when you were breaking inside. But here's what no one tells you. Being indispensable is one of the most dangerous roles you can play. Because when people rely on what you offer more than who you are, you stop being a person. You become a function, a role, a solution. And the longer you play that role, the more you begin to believe it's all you are. You forget how to rest without guilt. You forget what silence feels like without pressure. You forget how to exist without being needed. And slowly, quietly, your entire identity collapses into performance. You're not living anymore. You're rehearsing. This is how the fracture begins, not as a dramatic break, but as a slow erosion of your truth, your needs, your voice. You've been so good at being helpful that no one ever had to ask who you are beneath all that help. And maybe You never asked either. That's the tragedy of being needed. It feels like love, but it's not. It's utility. And when you finally stop performing, when you show up as someone with needs, not just answers, the energy shifts. People get uncomfortable. The warmth turns distant. The applause fades. Because they weren't clapping for you. They were clapping for the role you played in their story. And now that you've stopped playing it, they don't know what to do with you. But this isn't the end of connection. It's the beginning of clarity. Because if someone only stays close when you're useful, that's not a relationship. That's a transaction. And you are not a product to be accessed on demand. Carl Jung called this collapse of self into persona. The mask you wear to navigate a world that once punished your realness. The mask wasn't born from deception, it was born from survival. When your softness was dismissed, when your truth was too much, when your voice disrupted the balance, so you adapted. You became what was rewarded, competent, kind, available. But over time, the mask stopped being a tool. It became a prison. You weren't responding. You were maintaining. You weren't being. You were managing your place in people's lives who never asked who you were when you weren't giving. And now you've forgotten where your usefulness ends and your identity begins. When love is entangled with utility, stillness feels like betrayal. You start to believe that if you're not producing, you're not worthy. If you're not showing up for everyone, you're disappearing. And so you keep going until one day you can't. Not because you don't care, but because you finally do. You care about the self that's been buried under obligation. The version of you that never needed to be earned. The one that existed before you learned to bend. And the people who truly love you, they won't be threatened when you stop giving. They'll be grateful when you start being. Power doesn't always leave you in grand exits. Most of the time, it slips away in small, invisible leaks. Through arguments that shouldn't matter, reactions you didn't mean, messages you shouldn't have sent. You don't notice it at first. It feels justified. You think you're standing up for yourself, defending your truth, fighting for clarity. But the aftermath tells a different story. Your chest is tight. Your thoughts are scrambled. You can't stop replaying the moment in your head. You feel drained, heavy, unsure why the battle, one you thought you'd won, still tastes like loss. That's not empowerment. That's energy depletion. Every time you react from wound instead of wisdom, you pay a price. Carl Jung understood this long before social media turned every disagreement into a spectacle. To him, the psyche wasn't just a container of thoughts. It was a living current, an energetic system, constantly in flux, constantly responding to what we give attention to and what we surrender power to. Every reaction is an expenditure. Every triggered moment is a choice, conscious or not, of where your energy flows. And most people are hemorrhaging energy into places that give nothing in return. You send 5 paragraphs to someone who was never listening. You spiral over a comment made by someone who doesn't even know you. You lie awake, rehearsing an argument you'll never have. All of this is power leakage, and all of it feels like urgency, when in truth, it's addiction. Addiction to validation, to being right, to proving you matter. But true power isn't loud. It doesn't need defense. It doesn't need to perform. True power is measured in restraint. It's the silence you hold instead of replying, the breath you take instead of escalating, the space you create between stimulus and response. Because that space, that's where sovereignty lives. Your emotions are currency, and not every moment deserves your investment. Some exchanges are rigged, designed to drain you. And no matter how right you are, no matter how carefully you craft your truth, it will still be wasted if the receiver isn't capable of hearing it. So you start choosing differently. You start recognizing what's worth your voice and what isn't. You stop mistaking urgency for importance. You stop believing every provocation requires your participation. Not every fire deserves your flame. Emotional discipline is not suppression, it's conservation. It's the radical act of staying present without being hijacked. It's knowing that some battles aren't meant to be won. They're meant to be walked away from, with your energy intact. Because peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the refusal to hand your power to it. You don't have to say everything you feel. You don't have to attend every invitation to drama. You don't have to justify your clarity to people who profit from your confusion. You just have to stay still long enough to see the game, and then choose not to play. There's a moment, small, sharp, when someone says something and you feel it, not in your mind, in your body. A flush of heat, a tightening in your gut, a sudden urge to defend, to run, to lash out. That moment is a doorway. We call it a trigger, and most of us try to avoid it. We frame it as danger, proof that someone else is wrong. But in truth, your trigger isn't about them, it's about you. It's about what's been unhealed, unmet, unacknowledged. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the parts of you you had to exile to survive, the emotions that were too big, too loud, too unacceptable, the truths that were too painful to carry in the open. So you hid them, you pushed them down, you buried them under performance, perfection, and people-pleasing. But they never went away. They waited. And now, every time you're triggered, it's not just the present moment speaking, it's the echo of something ancient. A wound left open, a belief installed long ago, a memory your nervous system never fully processed. Your triggers aren't the problem, they're the portals. They show you where your inner child still flinches, where your adult self still wears armor, where your truth still trembles under the weight of old stories. This is where real healing begins, not by avoiding discomfort, but by moving toward it with curiosity instead of shame. That ache in your chest when someone interrupts you? Maybe it's the voice of a child who was never heard, that rage you feel when someone questions your worth. Maybe it's the echo of being made to prove your value again and again, that jealousy that creeps in when you see someone free. Maybe it's your soul asking why you keep choosing the cage. The shadow isn't evil. It's not something to kill or overcome. It's something to integrate, because beneath every overreaction is a part of you that's just asking to be seen, understood, loved. But here's the challenge. Society doesn't reward shadow work. It rewards image. It rewards control. It rewards the mask. And so many live their whole lives reacting to their pain instead of learning from it, fighting projections instead of claiming wholeness. But if you choose the deeper path, if you choose to meet your trigger with awareness, you reclaim something sacred, choice. You're no longer just reacting, you're responding. You're no longer held hostage by your past, you're present. You're no longer giving your power away to the one who hurt you, you're retrieving it. Every time you sit with a trigger instead of escaping it, you become less controllable and more free. And freedom doesn't mean being untouched by life. It means being unmoved by distortion. It means no longer seeing every difficult emotion as an enemy, but as a message, a guide, a mirror showing you where you've yet to return to yourself. This isn't easy work. It's sacred work. And it begins each time you say, "This pain is mine, and I'm willing to learn from it." The human mind doesn't see people as they are. It sees them as mirrors. You meet someone. You don't see them, not at first. You see your needs, your wounds, your unhealed memories. You see the version of them your nervous system is asking for. This is projection, and we all do it. We project strength onto leaders when we're afraid. We project kindness onto lovers when we're lonely. We project cruelty onto silence when we fear abandonment. And the moment someone steps outside of that projection, we panic. Not because they changed, but because our story about them did. And this is how manipulation is born. Not always out of malice, often out of fear. When someone starts reacting to the image of you they built in their mind, not the real you standing in front of them. They needed you to be the calm one, the patient one, the one who always says yes, always makes peace, always makes sense of chaos. That became your role. And when you step out of it, when you say no, when you go quiet, when you choose yourself, they don't just feel disappointed, they feel threatened. Not because you hurt them, but because you stopped being who they needed you to be in their story. This is the burden of the unspoken contract. You never signed it. You never agreed to carry it. But somehow you were cast in a role and you performed until now. And now that you've stopped playing that role, the emotional manipulation begins, subtle but sharp.
They'll say, "You've changed," as if growth is betrayal. They'll say, "You used to be so generous," as if boundaries are crimes. They'll say, "I just miss the old you," as if the old you wasn't built on self-abandonment. But you're not obligated to be someone else's idea of you. You're not responsible for preserving a version of yourself that made others comfortable but left you empty. Because every time you contort to fit their narrative, you disappear, bit by bit, until you no longer recognize the person in the mirror, just the performance. And when you finally stop performing, when you reclaim your no, your silence, your right to exist without justification, they call it distance, coldness, ego. But it's none of those things, it's truth. The moment you stop acting, the lies fall apart. Because people don't get angry when you become toxic. They get angry when you stop enabling their toxicity. You weren't difficult. You were disobedient to a dynamic that required your silence. You weren't cold. You were just done playing the role of the emotional savior. This is the unraveling of false connection, the end of agreements made in silence, the breaking of bonds built on distortion. And it hurts, it confuses, it shakes everything, but it also sets you free. Because the people who truly see you won't punish your truth. They'll honor it. They'll adapt to your evolution. They'll love you without needing to rewrite your script. And you'll finally feel what it means to belong without betraying yourself. When you finally pull back, truly pull back, not out of anger, not as a tactic, but as a quiet decision born from truth, something happens. At first, it's disorienting. The silence is louder than expected. The absence of noise, of demands, of roles you no longer fill. It feels strange, almost hollow. You might question yourself, doubt the clarity that brought you here. Wonder if solitude is healing or just another form of escape. But then, slowly, the noise fades, and underneath all the roles you used to play, the words you used to say, the patterns you used to protect, there's something else. You, the real you, not the fixer, not the forgiver, not the emotionally bulletproof version of yourself that people applauded but never truly knew. Just you, the self that breathes without performing, that feels without needing permission, that exists without earning its right to be. This isn't emptiness. This is return. Because sacred isolation isn't loneliness, it's reclamation. It's the space where the mask dissolves and the mirror becomes clear. You start noticing what your body actually feels like when it's not bracing, what your thoughts sound like when they're not rehearsing, what your intuition whispers when no one else is speaking over it. You begin to rebuild, not from pressure, not from scarcity, but from reverence. You choose people differently, not based on their potential, but on how your nervous system feels around them. Not on how much you can help them, but on how real you can be beside them. You take your time, you speak slower, you breathe deeper, you stop rushing into roles that make you disappear. You stop apologizing for your sensitivity, your slowness, your truth. Because this time, you're not building a life that looks good. You're building a life that feels good. One that fits your spirit. One where you are not just needed, you are known. And if you're still in the unraveling, if you're somewhere between who you were and who you're becoming, trust that place. Don't rush it. Don't judge it. The void between identities isn't a dead zone. It's a birthing ground. You're not broken. You're in the process of becoming someone who no longer fits inside the box they once survived in. This is sacred work, private work, slow work, but it's also the most important work you'll ever do. Because in the end, the goal was never to be everything for everyone. The goal was always to remember who you are when you're finally allowed to be nothing but yourself. If this spoke to something inside you, I invite you to leave one word in the comments, just one. A word that captures what you're reclaiming, your voice, your boundary, your peace, your name. Let it be your quiet declaration. You never needed permission to return to yourself.